shove in. He's done it. Tierney, great run, great goal. What a magnificent. It's a
Welcome back to Sideline Talk. This is a new feature we're going to be doing on the show. So the main idea is basically to get as many fans of you for Arsenal as possible to come on the show and hear your reactions on the team. So we can discuss current form, any rooms for improvement, predictions, reviews, anything mainly. We just want to upload as much as possible. And given the fact that two of the hosts on the show are Arsenal fans, like anybody, obviously, we want to talk about our own team. Anyway, so let's get cracking. I'm talking too much here. My guest today is Michael Price from You Are My Arsenal, based in the United States. For those of you that don't know him, it's a great blog. I've read some of it myself. Obviously, we're here to talk about things that are probably a little bit doomed considering recent events. But first of all, mate, how are you? You okay?
I'm well, man. How are you?
Yeah. I'm all good. I mean, considering, we've slept. Today's a new day. So obviously we played last night, so we'll touch on that briefly. But firstly, obviously we've only spoke through socials. Tell me about how you come across the support of Arsenal. How did that start? What made you support this team?
I started back in '89. I was in the U.S. Navy. I was stationed in two places. I was stationed in Naples, Italy, was my primary base, but my secondary base was in London. And we just got to games whenever we were in London, and I just fell in love with the Arsenal that way. I mean, my European football education I was in London in '89, and I was also when Arsenal does its amazing feat, and then at Anfield. And then, and I'm one of the 3 million people that was there, of course. But I lived in Naples at the time that Maradona was playing for Napoli, and I saw Maradona play live multiple times. So I got the best European football education that you could ever get. And I just fell in. I mean, I just loved Arsenal. I loved Highbury. I loved going to those matches, and I would go because when we were stationed in London, it's a NATO base, so I was stationed with members of the Royal Navy, the Royal Marines, and they're the ones that said, "Hey, we're going out to a match. Do you want to come?" And you'd go, and that was just it just that's how I loved it. And then I finally got out, and I just kept keeping up on it. And in the early days, following up with Arsenal was hard. You had to do it. We get Brit papers like the Mail over here every 2 weeks. So you were kind of always trying to catch up on the news, and then you could go to an expat pub I live near Philadelphia, and you could go into the pubs there. And then I would, before I got married and everything, I could travel over to London at least. My money didn't have to go to my wife. It went to, I would travel over to and catch at least 2 to 3 games a year if I could. So that's kind of how it all fell into. And then in about 2008. I was a member of Arsenal America, and their blog thing wasn't really taking off, and I just decided to do something for a group of us that just wanted a place to kind of have our own voice. And it was never intended to be anything other than just a place for like 20 of us to kind of write articles and then talk Arsenal. And it's now going, 2008, so it's 13 years later. I've got a great core of writers that are writing for us, and I'm proud of the content we put out. We're not an arse blog. He's the granddaddy of us all, right? but we try to just deliver good, insightful content. We try not to be overly, we want to be positive, but we try to be fair in our assessment of everything we do. We're not going to sit here and take like a social media perspective on something. We're not going to go to the extremes of high or low. We do analysis. I'm desperately trying to find somebody who's good with data, but that's kind of who we are, and that's what we do. And now we've got our podcast with Jess, launched, and she's doing a great job hosting that. So we're trying to just I'm from the U.S., but I've got writers that are in the U.K. I've got, I actually have a writer for a while. We had a writer from India, and so we try to really try and get a global perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds amazing. It must be quite interesting with the time differences as well, when you will sort of catch up on things. I know obviously off air we've had some sort of communication on when's best for us, but no, it sounds great, honestly. And just touching on that, obviously you was mentioning how long you've supported them, which is obviously amazing. Before my time, some of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And obviously it was a lot more of a successful club back then. Not to be too harsh on Arsenal, but you mentioned about the European times. The Champions League was more of a current thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you, what would you say is sort of what's been your perception of them this season, and what were your expectations originally?
My expectations probably were relatively low compared to a lot of people, because I always felt that I felt that post Wenger was going to always be transition, and it was going to be a transition time frame of more than just a year or two. I felt you were taking somebody who was the heart and soul of the club out of it, who essentially did so much for the club, and then you were trying to build and constitute a new model. And so not only are you trying to change a backroom structure, but you also have to change the recruitment policies. You have to change the squad. So much has to change with this team that I look. You look back to, I don't know how much you were paying attention to what was happening to Liverpool when Hicks and Gillette nearly turned it into administration, but FSG bought them, and they spent like 4 or 5 years in the wilderness before they landed on Rodgers, and they started to come up. Then they get Klopp. I think we have to expect that this is going to be a time in the wilderness for us, if you will. We're not going to be happy about it. We're not going to be comfortable about it. We're going to have more nights like last night and this past weekend happened than I think we're comfortable or used to. But it's got to happen because there's so much that has to change. And so going into this season, I had no expectations. I've continually said this year. I don't think we were as good as the FA Cup win in the summer suggested, and I don't think we were as bad as that fall run had us at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I like that you touched on the FA Cup win as well. I think that gave a lot of people false expectations in terms of where we were at.
Yep.
I've heard this said before, and I mean, it is true. A lot of people saw that sort of ride in the FA Cup as, oh, this is where we're going to be. We beat the likes of City. Then obviously we beat the likes of Chelsea quite dominantly as well. So I think maybe it gave people a perspective which they shouldn't have had, because there's still a lot of work to do. It's always good to have no expectation as well, because in that way you can't really be too disappointed as much anyway. I mean, you still get gutted, but it's a bit of a relief. At least you won't, like some people were sort of expecting that top 4 position and the Arsenal to be reunited again. But we're far away from it in my opinion. And obviously yours, like you said.
Yeah, I think we're still far away, and I think the biggest thing that has to happen, and I don't think, look, I know people want the easiest person to criticize and judge is the manager right now. Why? Because he's a single person, and it's the easiest thing for a club to change. You can't. I joked yesterday, I think after, for the first half, I think I put out a tweet that yesterday said, I wish this were like FIFA and Football Manager, because I'd sell every player on the squad all at once. But you can't do that. In real life, you can't do that. And so the easiest thing to do is to criticize the manager, because they're also the most public face of the team, right? Yeah. So the easiest thing to criticize, and look, there are things to criticize Arteta for. I think he's trying to prove that he is smarter I think he feels he has to prove that he's smarter than everybody gives him credit for. And I think he makes some mistakes that he's making. But you know what? Arsene Wenger did that too. Arsene Wenger always had to prove that he was smarter than everybody else, right? Yeah. I don't think it's anything to do with Arteta being a novice coach. I think it has to do with a person who's really locked into who they are. They know what they want to do and how they want to play. So he's going to do what he wants to do. That being said, I think the biggest problem Arsenal has right now is their squad. And I wrote a piece 2 days ago. It was if you had the time to read 2,100 words, it really tried to map out the history of the squad that we have right now, and where, I go back to maybe the last 2 or 3 years of Arsene Wenger's tenure, and he was less about building a squad and more about bringing, we suddenly found ourselves the ability to have some more money, a little bit more freedom to bring in players. We were bringing in Alexis Sanchez, Mesut Ozil, and then we started bringing in Alexander Lacazette. And then you follow that up with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and nobody's thinking these guys can't play. Nobody's making like when you build a squad. I think a squad has to be looked at like building a puzzle, right? Yeah. The 11 players that are on the pitch, plus the ones that are sitting on the sidelines, when they play, they all have to play and they have to complement each other. In order for the best to happen on the pitch, they have to look at City. Look at the way the players play off of each other, the way that they complement. Each player is bought in for a purpose and a role. And right now, I think 2/3 of the squad that Michael Arteta has, they don't fit. They don't fit the way he wants to play. I think more problematic is I don't think they fit into the mentality that he wants. I think that there are players in there that just don't care. And I'm looking at our captain right now. It looks like we gave him a big contract so he could go buy a new Ferrari, and he just doesn't care. And that's not down to Edu or Arteta's recruitment, because I think let me take a step back before I go further. I'd be happier if you told me Michael Arteta was our head coach and, say, a more seasoned European executive was handling transfers, like, say, a Ralph Ragnick or even a Sven Mislintat who left. Because I think the transition for Arsenal is just so big. It's just such a big task right now, right? That being said, we have who we have, so we have to kind of deal with it on one point. So they're restructuring the way we do business, and I'm not that displeased with most of their transfers. I think Thomas Partey is going to be fine. I think he's going to be more than fine. I think he's going to be outstanding. Gives us something in the midfield that we just haven't had. The ability to close control and building out, moving the ball out of the back. Yes, he's looked off the last few times I've seen him play, but I think that's probably more down to the fact that I think he's had more injuries in his short time at Arsenal than he had in his entire career. Right?
Yeah, it's come out of nowhere as well. It's it's quite baffling, to be honest. All of a sudden, he's this injury-prone player.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think with what you say as well on Partey, obviously we'll touch on it briefly at the end in terms of last night's game, but he received a lot of slander, and I was just thinking, the whole team were bad, really. When you look at it, there was only 2 players that started the game at least that you could say, okay, they were a reasonably good performance. It wasn't their heads to blame. Other than that, I think all 9 were at fault. Everyone made an error there or so.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is they are expecting a lot from Partey this season, given the fact that he was our one name, as well as Gabriel. But I think in the midfield, you've got a little bit more of a responsibility because you've got to hold that position in the back 4 as well. And you're obviously looking after the attack. I completely agree with every word you just said there. I think Partey's going to be amazing. And like you touched on, the fact we haven't had a player like him in a long time. The midfield, we haven't for ages.
Right.
I think Granit Xhaka, I'm a big fan of. I've always been, and I think he receives more slander than what he really deserves. It has come to him, though, from, what's gone on at the stadium and some disappointing performances where he's made errors. But after your Vieiras as such and your Fabregases and stuff like that, we've not really had a proper midfielder you can look at and say, right, he's going to change the game. Or someone that actually shows the effort, like you touched on, because we're lacking leaders in that squad. It's embarrassing when we have the injuries that we had, like previous, where we had Xhaka, Luiz, Saka and Smith-Rowe all out injured, and the team just fell apart. I just find that a little bit embarrassing. Not to disrespect the players, but it's just the fact that we haven't got enough depth in all the positions.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's where we're going wrong as well. In terms of like, so I was going to ask you where do you think it has gone wrong, but we've sort of gone over that. In terms of like, yeah, with obviously the board, and we've not really kept consistency in the players that we're signing. Like signing 2 strikers in the space of 2 or 3 seasons, for me, it's a bold move. Like because we need, especially when other areas are completely like
That,
lacking that quality.
that's the point. It's for a while we were just bringing players in that didn't make sense. They didn't fit at, like where the problems were, and um, I think when Arteta was signed, we actually started. He started addressing the spine. He focused solely on the spine of the team, defenders, 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 and then he brought in, Partey, and I think that's what he's doing. That's what he's saying. I need to compete. Um, we just for the longest time we were just bringing in players because they were players and they didn't make sense and they didn't complement each other. And that, to me, that has just been the biggest problem. The recruitment and the squad makeup for Arsenal is the biggest problem that they have. And until you and look, people may not have the patience for waiting to see about Mikel Arteta, and they may say he has to go. But how, okay, fine. Are you going to have the next coach is going to need patience because the same problems still exist.
Yes, exactly that. And it's the thing is with that as well is I think with Emery when he came in, he left, and the problem everyone was expecting Arteta to come in and do miracles, and like you say, the problem was still there massively.
Yeah.
Do, sorry, I think I interrupted you before, but my next question is probably going to be answered in what you're about to say. Had it not been Mikel Arteta, do you think another manager like your Allegri or your Tuchel or your, to be honest, even Pep, I'm going to say Pep because there is a lot to do. Do you think another manager would have changed the things? I'm talking before even Emery stepped in. So if we would have got rid of Wenger and then started fresh, do you think it is a case of just what's happened, or do you think another manager in that position with the squad they've got could do a better job?
If you're talking about the period before Emery, like let's say that, but even an Arteta was appointed before Emery or somebody appointed before Emery, as long as the commitment to change how we were recruiting players was happening, as long as whoever that head coach insisted as part of their commitment that the way we bring players in is changed, then yeah, maybe it is different by now. But here's the thing. Emery, and I pointed this out to somebody. When Emery came in, he basically said, no, my job is to be the coach. My job. He just basically said, I'm going to coach and let them do. And that's the model that he's used to. That's the model he had with Monchi, and that's the model, so he was okay with that. And I always contend that's why he was brought in, because Raul wasn't looking for somebody to rock the boat.
Yeah.
He wanted somebody in there. I've argued a whole long story that by the time we hired Emery, we knew that Ivan Gazidis was, it maybe not publicly, but in the background, they knew Ivan Gazidis was going to go bye-bye and stuff like that. If you had brought in a better coach and you had started to change how we recruit players, then maybe we'd be in a better spot now. I don't think we'd still be that far along. I think I think we're going to see. We'll start when the squad is right or closer to being right. You're going to see it much like it happened with Liverpool. I think you're going to see a team that competes more and falls short of loftier, higher goals, but is still going to be in the mix in the top 4. And then I think whether it's with Arteta as the manager, or whether it's with somebody else, I think it's going to one day it's going to be a final piece that comes in on the field or on the sideline that comes in and turns it over for Arsenal. I think it's a process, and people laugh at that idea of trusting the process, but that's the reality of it. So much of this club needed to change. So much. But see, that's the thing. We're fans, so none of us are accountants. None of us are recruiters. We're fans, and we want to win.
Yeah.
We want effort. We want that. So I get it, but at the same time, like I said, the principle of my blog has always been to be fair. And yeah, Michael Arteta's got some novice mistakes that he makes, and maybe being a novice, maybe being so locked into being right isn't the best way to be. But at the same time, I'm not going to throw him under the bus simply because I see a bigger picture problem with Arsenal.
Definitely. I think you put that brilliantly. I think you're preaching to the choir, to be honest. I think a lot of people that listen will be agreeing with most of, if not everything that you've just said. So we're talking about recruitment now. Obviously, that's the sort of problem. After this, we'll sort of touch on because there's another topic that's been brought up today that I want to bring on that topic. But what would you say, or who, not to throw any slander at a player in particular, what would you expect this summer in terms of what sort of player to bring in or who to go? Because like you said, I think a lot of people are expecting unrealistic expectations. I know you touched on earlier the Football Manager and the FIFA, on how like a lot of the teams do need to sort of be shifted. And I know there's a lot of fans out there calling for that, where they would get rid of every player on the field right now. But what sort of player or who would you like to see let go? I know there's a lot of talks of, Bellerin, but who would you say? Because I know you follow it quite a lot by your blog. I've read some of your stuff, and I know you've seen more than most, and you can look away back to what I can.
Yeah,
I can only look back to sort of so many years. But who do you think should improve this, or go and sort of?
Let's talk about the outgoings first. Now, this is just, I want to caveat this. This is my personal preference. This is
cover yourself. Yeah.
I would personally sell Aubameyang and Lacazette. And I know that's going to be a wild thing happening there, but the reality is this: I just don't see it working. I want us to be younger and hungrier up front. I want us to be a little bit more fluid. I want us to actually have players that have a desire. And I'm going to look at Gabriel Martinelli. I think Gabriel Martinelli came on last night and showed more in the 10 minutes that he was on the pitch than any, but I'd be okay, and I'm absolutely okay with Bellerin being sold. I like Bellerin. I think he's got a good touch and good ball control, but he's lost a step ever since. And look, it's not because he's, people are like, oh, it's because he's vegan. I think it's because he had a serious ACL injury, and that impacts everything. So, and frankly, he's been a loyal servant, and I think we should honor his request. If he's asked to go, I think we should let him go. I like Granit Xhaka, but I'm fully expecting Xhaka to actually look to leave this summer. And the reason why is, to go through what he went through and the abuse that he gets online. If you want to criticize Xhaka, it's fine to be critical of his technical quality at times and his speed. And where he lacks technically in the midfield is the ability to take the ball in the half turn, and then maybe he is a little bit slower. But people are like, oh, well, he slows down play. And I want to argue, you probably don't realize that the coach asks him to slow play down. He gets the ball at his feet, and he wants him to pick up and look at what's happening in front of him and decide, do I need to put the ball into the corner? Do I need to do a through ball? That's what he's looking to do. That's what he's been asked to do. That's why the play slows down, because the coach asks him to slow it down, wants him to see that position that way. But I would not be surprised if he goes. And then obviously there's the out. Even though Kolasinac is not here, he's still on our books. So I want him to go. There's not a play. There's really few players I would keep.
It's sad, isn't it?
Tierney, Gabriel, Mari, I would keep, because I think Mari's a good, solid backup at that left center back position. Partey, I would keep. I would keep obviously Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, Gabriel. Obviously, in the news today about Balogun signing a new contract, so I think that means Eddie Nketiah is gone.
Yeah.
So, And then obviously, I think some of the fringe players, Reese Nelson. The good thing about it is if we could somehow manage to get good money for these players, and some of these players are only going to net us 15 million pounds tops, right? And we should be okay with that. That means we can. I think the player to sign for us is Martin Odegaard. I think when he's on the pitch at 20, what is he, 22 years old?
He's young.
He's young. He's creative, and I think that's the biggest thing this team needs. It needs creativity in order to play the way Mikel Arteta wants to play. And then you got to figure out the debate that we're having in our writing channel is, okay, so let's assume that Xhaka goes. Who do you bring in? Do you bring in somebody who is exactly like Thomas Partey, or do you bring in somebody that's a little different, offers you something different? Because I was doing some scouting of what's his name from Fulham, the midfielder from Fulham.
I know who you mean. Everyone keeps going on about him as well because they're going down, obviously. Anguissa, yeah, or something like that. I didn't want to try it because on this podcast I've been slandered for my bad pronunciations. But yeah, that's him. He does look like a good talent as a backup, at least. Anyway,
he does. He's more like a Partey. So I was looking at him comparatively. I was looking at stats comparative to Bissouma, who's everybody's talk. Obviously, is getting. But I don't think you're going to get Bissouma, especially if they come up and whatnot. I don't think that's. I'm sorry, they're not come up. They're going to stay, and they've got a good coach. And I'm sorry, I don't see him. If he's going for a fee that we can't afford right now. Anguissa's one. Obviously, there's the kid from Norwich that that everybody's talking about. The
Buendia, is it? Yeah. Buendia. There you go. I told you about the pronunciation.
But I think and I think I think Arsenal are gonna have to make a choice between Mavropanos and Saliba. And I'm more inclined to think that I would not be surprised if they tried to move Saliba. And I think it's simply because it has nothing to do with talent. I think they respect his talent. I think it's the mentality. And Mikel Arteta has been very big on mentality. And I think people are like, oh, well, that doesn't. Yeah, I said you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have a brain between your shoulders, you're never going to. And I say this as a coach. I'm a coach, and I tell my players all the time, if you can't think and have the mental approach to the game, forget it. You can have all the talent in the world, because sooner or later the guy who can outthink you on the field and is more hungrier and is more desire.
Why did he make that decision to sort of choose Balogun? Because like you say, I think he's not going to keep the two. I think it's going to be a case of Eddie's going to need to go now, especially because Balogun's going to need game time. He's going to be on a fair few high wage, I'd say. Just if we're going off the fact that I imagine he'll be in a bit more of a rotating player rather than where at the moment he's not.
Yeah, I think.
Are you happy with that decision?
Yeah, I think Eddie is a great young prospect. I think he just doesn't fit into how the manager wants to play. I think maybe Mikel Arteta finds him a little bit limited in what he offers when he's up front, and I think that becomes a problem. And maybe isn't. I keep wondering. I keep wondering about what it is, but I think Balogun probably has more of an upside. I think that's basically what it is. I think it really comes down to it that Balogun just has more of an upside in terms of what he's doing. Maybe there's a little bit more strength to his game. There's a little bit more mobility to his game. Maybe a little bit more better movement off the ball. I think that's something that, making those blindside runs is something Arteta wants his forwards to do. So I think, look, they're young players and we don't see them play a lot, so we can't understand what they're seeing at training to make that decision. But I think he obviously sees a bigger upside in Balogun than he does in Eddie Nketiah. Plus, Eddie probably could get us some. We could probably get 12 to 15 million for him from a championship team or something like that.
Yep. Definitely, and I think the good thing about Balogun as well, he's quite versatile. He can play on the left and the right, whereas Eddie, I think at the moment, he's going to struggle getting in the centre forward because unfortunately, Martinelli he can play up top, and I think on the left wing we're a little bit full. And I go back to the fact that it annoys me because at the back and in midfield we lack completely, and then all of a sudden up top it's like the world's your oyster. We can have who we want.
Right.
We'll touch on last night's game.
Do we have?
No, we'll do it briefly. What are your expectations now? Do you think we can turn it around? I know it's a stupid question, but we've got to be honest and realistic with ourselves.
Well, look, I mean, that game shouldn't have even been close last night. I mean,
yep.
If Saka hits that one shot, that one open shot that he has, or if oh my God, I mean, the Lacazette one-on-one with the goalkeeper that.
Yeah, I know that expression is it alone. It was quite funny because he received so much slander, but then you saw Aubameyang and Saka miss complete sitters themselves. So it was a bit of karma, really, I guess. But
yeah, look, I think once you saw those shots get missed, you kind of knew what the result was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I still think Arsenal will make it through this tie, but I don't think we'll win the Euro if we continue to play like we've been playing. There's no way we can win this. The reality is there's no way we can win this, and that's problematic for a club like Arsenal. We need to be in Europe, but we need to be in Europe somehow. And I last night was just awful to watch. There's no way that game. The whole tie should be over after last night. And the problem that they're going to have is that Slavia Prague is a different beast at home compared to when they're on the road. But they're also a different beast in Europe than they are in their league. In their league, they're unbeaten. They're a beast in their league. But on Europe, they struggle. And they didn't. The problem with last night is it's not like. And again, it's the problem with Arsenal all season. We're seldomly getting outplayed. We're making stupid mistakes that, you could literally play that entire game last night with Slavia Prague just not even playing till the last 10 minutes, knowing that they'd get a chance. And that's the way it worked with Arsenal. Teams know that, hey, they're bound to make a mistake and we'll capitalize on it. And so that tie shouldn't have even been close. And I still, like I said, I think it's going to take 2 goals. It's going to take 2 goals at Slavia Prague, and it's going to take shutting them down. It's probably going to take 3 goals because the reality is we can't keep a clean sheet. So though I suspect we'll have a clean sheet this weekend for Sheffield United because they can't score. So so I think last night was predictable based on just the positive I took is that we were opening them up on that right side all day long, through balls, there was enough space to operate in the half spaces. I
think it needed Pepe in there, to be honest. I was quite disappointed in the lineup, which was my next question. What did you actually make of the line? Did you think that it was too bold of a move? I think it was only 1 or 2 players I'd have probably swapped out, if I'm honest, because obviously with the injuries, there's only so much you can do in that squad. But for me, the decision to drop Aubameyang, I was 70-30 on, because it's a European quarterfinal. So I think when you've got to play your captain, regardless of what we think of him as a captain, I think it was a game which he could have really delivered in as well. Right. I think had he been on the field early, he probably would have put away a chance or 2 that wasn't taken. And I think if you're going to drop him, you've got to play Pepe. Right. Because he's got the best Europa League performances in terms of attack at the moment. And his pace is incredible. His pace just is a different gravy in that Arsenal squad. So what did you make of it? Similar or is...
Well, look, in hindsight, given how many chances we created, I would have absolutely started Pepe on that left hand, on that right hand side coming in, because there was so much space for him to operate on. My preference would have been, pre-game, before I saw anything, I actually would have dropped Saka back to left back, supporting. I wanted Martinelli on the left, and then Pepe on the right, and Aubameyang. I wanted what we finished with to start the game.
Yeah.
Right? And I think based on what I saw last night, their movement, Martinelli and Pepe were more dangerous in the 10 to 15 minutes that they were on the pitch than the entire team was. They were getting better chances. We were creating better chances. I thought Emile Smith-Rowe was probably the most influential player on the pitch for most of the match yesterday.
Yeah, he was good.
I would have gone with that as my lineup, and maybe even put Cedric on the right instead of Bellerin. It's not
weird, isn't it? Weird time to bring Bellerin back into the team. I thought. I think it's just strange. Maybe he's putting him in the shop window. Who knows?
It could be, or it's just, hey, you know what? We'll see. Maybe it's you're planning on leaving, so we've got to start looking at our options on that position. And I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but it's clear to me that the reason why he's gone with Chambers in the league is because he doesn't trust. This is going to sound weird because he started both of them last night. I'm not so sure he trusts. I think he finds Bellerin and Cedric a little too inconsistent. They have good things about them, but for the most part, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Chambers wasn't even in the squad. I don't know if you've read up on that and why he wasn't. I'm not sure if it was just a tactical move, but Chambers didn't even appear to be in the team, which I found a bit bizarre, considering he's not had bad performances. And like you say, on that right side, they were exposed. Slavia Prague were. It was basically it was sort of somewhere for anyone to go. And I think Cedric's good enough, though. I think him and Pepe would have a good. So if it would have been that, it would have been a different story. But hey, I'm hoping you're correct. I had a 3-1 prediction for last night. I was completely wrong. But hopefully 3-1. I'll take it next week now, definitely.
Yeah.
It's been amazing to have you on, Michael. I want to thank you for coming on. I know it's quite early there, so I'm gonna sort of let you
I gotta get on with it. I got to get back to work.
Yeah, definitely. Before you go, I know you've briefly touched on it, but just let people know where they can find you, because I'm sure they're going to want to read some of your stuff. And obviously, I know you've got a podcast too.
Sure. So obviously, you can follow me at YouAreMyArsenal on Twitter if you're not following me already. Our website is youaremyarsenal.com, and we're putting out content as often as we can. I've got some of my writers are in uni. So they're busy wrapping up their years, but we're doing some good stuff. I really like the content that the writers are putting out, and occasionally you'll catch me writing again. So like I did this week when I think it's a piece that I really do like. It's the kind of piece that I like to, where I kind of describe how we got to the state we are in with our squad. So yeah, You Are My Arsenal on Twitter. YouAreMyArsenal.com is the website URL.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michael. And for those of you that listen, thank you very much. Make sure you check out You Are My Arsenal. Keep subscribing. Make sure to hit that like button. This will be something we'll be doing as much as possible, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you very much, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Take it easy.
All right. Bye-bye.